Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of Grounded, hosted by yours truly, DillyDave, aka the MilkyBarKid. I'm passionate about connecting with fellow creatives to explore the art of staying balanced. Whether it's unlocking your creative flow or managing your mental well-being, we're here to help each other stay anchored and mentally sound. In today's episode, we're joined by the multi-talented Amutha, who wears many hats including that of a musician. We'll delve into the concept of living a lighter life and discuss practical steps to keep your feet firmly planted in the present moment. You can discover her solo projects on Spotify and YouTube under the name Amutha, and she's also a key member of the buzzing Melbourne-based band Damn Fine Chai. So take a deep breath in, exhale slowly, and open your mind. Let the forthcoming dialogue envelop you like a refreshing wave of insight. Boop.
Bop.
And welcome, beings of the multiverse, to arguably the first episode of Grounded, but arguably not the first episode of Grounded with DillyDave. Here we are joined by the one, the great Amutha.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Amutha is a multidiscipline, multimedia artist, including visual and music, all things sound.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this podcast is called Grounded, so we should probably get grounded before we actually get into it. So I'd like to acknowledge the sacred ground that we're recording on today. I'd like to, acknowledge the Boonwurrung and the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to acknowledge that the sovereignty of these lands was never ceded, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and future. And hold some gratitude for that. Anything to add, Amutha?
I have a great deal of appreciation for the acknowledgement when it's done in a way that is actually bringing us into the space and helping us connect to the land. And so I appreciate that being done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting on your sacred little garden patch out here, balcony.
All of that is poisonous.
Uh-huh.
Everything that you're looking at in the garden is poisonous.
Okay.
We've got lead in the soil, and that's just something that most people up north have at the moment because lead from the paint that they were using in houses leaked off into the soil. So now it's very toxic.
Wow.
Can't eat anything from there.
That's incredibly strange because it looks like the garden looks pretty healthy.
It's popping off.
It's really going off.
It's flourishing.
It's just heavy lead.
Just loving the fact that no one's plucking anything there. It's just like, yes, we can thrive here. But yeah, they're doing well.
It's almost a protected species.
Yeah.
Protected little ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. It's doing its thing.
Well, yeah. Lead is heavy, and sometimes heavy things are quite the burden.
Yeah.
Such a burden you can't even stomach it. So, Amutha.
Yes.
What's your current direction and projection at the moment?
Whoa.
If you had to let people in on what is happening now, what is it?
As always, a lot of self-reflection and constantly being reminded that the outer world is informed by the inner state. Can't avoid that truth and that reality because everything that I do in my life always comes back to what's going on inside me. And it almost feels like, external reality is just it's almost like, I don't know if incidental is the right word to use. It's it doesn't matter what's happening externally.
It's like noise.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just funny. I don't have necessarily a projection because I've noticed that when I do tend to project into the future, I set myself up with expectation. And if I don't reach that expectation, I get disappointed. So I'm trying to learn to be a little bit more present and just, yeah, be here now.
I think with expectations, a lot of them we place in the external, right? Like
Exactly. Yep.
it's almost like expectation is this contract that we have with society about how we'll be going about our way.
Right.
And if you sign off on too many of them, then yeah, it just becomes too much to manage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like the thing is, you can't necessarily know what you need in your life. Because like, I guess there's certain things that in order to bring your gift into the world, there's certain things that you need to cultivate within yourself. And we don't actually know what those things are. So if we have goals and stuff, that's really nice. And if we try and achieve them, that's great. But we can't really be fixed too much to the image of what we want to achieve, because maybe the journey, right? It's never about the destination. The thing that you accomplish on the way to that place is what you're actually trying to get out of it on a more fundamental level.
Right. That and the actual pursuit is so exciting and
Yes, for
engaging,
sure.
and like
Yeah.
when you're in it and it doesn't matter whether you're driven or motivated or whatever, but if you're in it, it's like, the pursuit is probably like, imagine this simple analogy.
Okay.
You're
hit me.
running like you're running like a 200-meter sprint, right? And there's the whole build up before that race.
Yeah.
Right. All these things that have happened. Just
Yeah.
the fact that you're there and you're like on the lineup, right?
True. Yeah.
Is pretty good.
Yeah.
And then, you really have to kind of wrestle with yourself. You don't exactly know. There's so many things that are outside of your control that can happen, like every other individual that you're up against.
Yeah.
But then I imagine, say, somehow if you were the one who did win that, I imagine the few strides before the finish line where you know that you've won. I think that is probably going to almost feel better, like that release on that edge there, than anything else that happens afterwards, than getting the trophy or drinking or like answering to all these people around you. Like, how'd you do that?
Yes.
Like, all of that is kind of meaningless.
Yeah, like the anticipation, the knowing that it's about to happen.
It's right there.
It's right there.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful feeling.
I think
for
that's
sure.
incredibly grounding, like having that thing right there, and to get to that point, you have to set it up,
Yeah, exactly.
and if if it's not like such a strict contract with yourself, but more of like a epic promise or a gesture to the universe, or however you want to frame it,
Yeah.
that seems like something that's way bigger, that's inside of you, that you can kind of try and reach towards.
Totally. Yeah.
I put a couple things on my phone, a couple prompts,
All right.
because I think we've already segued really nice into this idea of living lighter.
Yes.
And I think that there's so many different ways to pick apart that idea. So I think just to start off, what does living lighter mean to you? Do you even think about that? Is that something that you're conscious of?
I think that in order to operate in the way that I am currently, I have to accept and appreciate living lighter. So I've chosen like financial insecurity, like over, is that the right way to say it around? I'm basically prioritizing my dream over like financial security.
Right. You and the financial security, there's a bit of noise in there, and there's a bit of reality in there as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So it makes it a bit harder to. It's the level of commitment and the stakes are higher.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, I actually feel like having that kind of pressure on me is keeping me on my toes and really like keeping me committed to the dream as well. Because, when I am at home, I've learned not to push myself to the point of burning out. It's all, you go through everything when you're in this position. But I like when I'm at home, my working day is to do music. But I also recognize that the only way I can do music properly is if I feel good, and if I feel present to what I'm doing. So I don't even necessarily need to feel good, but as long as I'm present and there's creative juice flowing.
Right. So you're setting up all these other things around it. So when you go into that thing that you want to manifest, that dream, the music or the art or whatever it is, you're not burdened by any other shit.
Yes.
And whether that's like toxins or whatever in your body, or whether it's like fucking social or romantic luggage, or debt, or financial issues.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. So I've broken the kind of like the idea of living lighter into a few segments, right? And there are two categories.
Yeah.
So there's the within yourself, and then there's within the world.
Okay.
Right. So it's very simple. Like within yourself, I broke them down into like three kind of ways, or like I guess categories. And I guess we'll go through them and kind of try and come up with, a couple ideas.
Okay.
About how to look at that aspect of yourself and uncumber yourself a little bit.
Cool. I like this.
So the first one is mind. So Amutha, what are some ways that we can make our mind feel lighter or clearer or cleaner?
I think one of the most important things for myself personally has been being okay with the fact that sometimes feelings don't go away. So if anxiety comes up, if fears come up, if any kind of insecurities come up, just like, I guess the hardest part is realizing that you're in it.
Right.
But once you do have like a small moment of understanding that you're not in your most natural state, and your natural state is just presence. You're just here in the world. You don't have any rumination, thoughts going through your mind. You can just be in the moment. So when identifying that is not happening, I kind of like sit back and I try and feel into what that emotional experience is. I'm like, most of the time for me, it's anxiety.
Right. So it's taking you out of yourself.
Yes.
That's the thing that's happening.
And then once I identify that it's anxiety, the process from there is just to be okay with the fact that it's there and it's not going to go away. And that's also okay.
Right. So the acceptance kind of helps.
Right.
Because when it comes up again, it's just familiar, I guess.
Yeah. You've already welcomed it home. It just needs to know that you still want it to be a part of yourself, but you just don't want it to run the show. So just kind of like radical acceptance and forgiveness and just like, yep, you're all good. You can be here right now. I want to stay here in this presence, but you can also be here with me and I love you and it's all good.
Right. So you're kind of not letting it make you feel small in your own fucking world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're trying not to shrink down in your own mind, basically.
Cool. I like that. That's a good like grounding exercise that can help you, I guess like another word for that is what is it? Compartmentalize. What is it? Oh my God.
I don't know that word. Compartmentalize.
Compartmentalize.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. Yeah.
But I think how do you say? Compartmentalize is way more of like a technical icky word that doesn't really. It's more for like organizing storage and shelves as opposed to like. Because you're not just like putting it in parts of your brain. You're just like letting it kind of sit where it needs to sit.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think when you are compartmentalizing,
I'm sorry,
you got me
I
fucked
that
up now.
You. I know, that's my bad.
It almost implies that you're like taking it and placing it somewhere and keeping it separate from everything else, where it's just like it's a really fluid thing that can just float around in your ecosystem internally and find its way.
Right, because you're not trying to hide it away.
No, you want it to be there. It's just a part of who you are. It's a part of who you are that you find hard to relate to, but that doesn't make it less you. And I think when it feels, I almost treat it like an alive thing that needs its own kind of validation and safety and comfort. So when you reject it, it obviously, like a child, it gets louder and it wants more of your attention.
Or gets more deranged. Actually, that's such a good analogy. Okay. Wow. That's really something.
Yeah.
Because if you treat it as like if you kind of either personify it or treat it as like a entity instead of a thing that can be like either discarded or ignored, then yeah, I guess like at least you're tempering it, if nothing else, you know.
It's good to try and develop empathy for your own emotional experience, because you can provide that for other people, but I think we struggle to do that for ourselves. And if you can be empathetic towards your emotions, as in treat them like people inside you, like specifically children who are really, I find it difficult to communicate, so they are a lot more like expressive emotionally about how they're feeling.
Right.
Yeah, relating to them in that way I've found has been helpful for me.
Yeah. No, very interesting. God, you always seem to blow my mind.
Oh, thank you.
All right, cool. Well, I feel like there's some really cool ideas in terms of ways to make your mind feel lighter, and I guess it seems to be more about like embracing what's there and letting it kind of find its place. And God, what else? How else would you summarize it?
I mean, really, I would say that that's my way, but there might be a different way for anybody listening. Like, that's what I've found easy, but you might find it easier to, I don't know, maybe just like pay attention and focus on something like stitching or like doing some really meticulous work, because maybe that's the break from your own mind that you need in order to come back to that place of peace. So I guess it just depends who you are and how your mind operates.
Okay, so it could be returning to something that is like kind of familiar and probably tactile. Or...
Yeah, something that can almost get you into a state of meditation.
Right.
Because I know a lot of people struggle to just sit there for 15 minutes. I know I do. But like, so if you don't think you're able to like actually sit and meditate, just doing something that requires you to pay attention to it.
Right. So you're just talking about like mindful exercises or mindful activities.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm really here doing this thing. Let's really focus and bring myself into this. Whether it's building Lego or whatever the fuck it is.
Bike riding. Any hobby, swimming, walking, like gardening, whatever it may be.
I love that. All right. Well, that kind of transitions nicely into how we can make the body feel lighter. And, you know, there's probably a million different ways to do that. But aside from the obvious, like, you know, maybe some exercise and eating right, what have you find helps make you sit in your body lighter and nicer?
So, again, this has worked for me. I'm not trying to imply this is some objective reality truth kind of thing.
No, we're here to fix the world.
I found that when I'm feeling tense, I just go and lie on my bed and I kind of close my eyes and I do a little bit of breathing, and eventually I can feel a little bit more of what my body is trying to communicate to me, because sometimes there's like tension being held in certain places and you don't notice it because I don't know, maybe you're breathing shallow, and because you're breathing shallow you're tensing your like abdomen, and like that's actually, by doing that constantly, you've now just got a tense ab.
Right.
So noticing stuff like that and then just stretching them out really gently and breathing while doing that has been really helpful.
Okay, so incorporating like breathing and stretching and really trying to find and focus on spots in your body.
Yeah.
And then I guess that would be the starting exercise or practice to get you to know what to focus on and maybe work with.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe that's just what your body needs. You know, sometimes your body needs to like get rid of something, and whether that's tension or like hormones through your tear ducts, whatever it may be, sweating, like peeing, you know, like it needs to flush toxins out. And I think some of the ways that it could do that is like by showing you where your body's tense and kind of getting you to move around.
That's great.
But I don't really know. You know, this is like all me just intuiting what's going on with me when this is happening. I don't really know.
I mean, I think the concept enough is good guidance for other people just to be looking in those directions.
Hopefully.
Well,
yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I have to premise that this podcast isn't going to probably fix anybody's life, but it's just more about having.
Oh, it might.
It's
Never say never.
It's just more about having, you know, kind of useful ideas and just hearing other people talk about things that everyone deals with. I think is just so handy.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, not all friends are like probably that transparent about everything that happens in their life. So maybe people are not exposed to, you know, whatever kind of thinking.
Yes. And like sometimes you forget that, you know, some experiences in life that are really difficult are almost universal. Like a lot of people experience anxiety. A lot of people experience fear, sadness, like loneliness, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I'd say everyone experiences all of the above.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so like if you feel like you're just like alone in this really crappy mood that you're in, you're very likely not. Like no one's perfect, you know? And I think it's hard because maybe you tend to compare to people like, you know, that person looks so put together. And I'm just like, I think my housemate said that to me the other day. We're quite a few years apart, but she's like, yeah, you're so switched on and you just feel like you have your shit together. I'm like, dude, the other day I literally thought I was such a loser. And I genuinely felt that. Like, no one's that put together. Like, you know, you just get better over time. Right. If you work on it. Yeah. But nah, we're not perfect.
Oh, no. It's so interesting you say that. I've totally felt like I've been a loser recently. I mean, on and off for years, for sure. On and off for most of my life.
Another fundamental human experience.
Yeah. I mean, you know, that feeling of inadequacy or just whatever it is. And often stems from that comparison to other people.
Yeah.
And it's like if you were only just focusing on you and cultivating you, it doesn't even matter what's happening out there. Yeah. And then when you come across people like that, you know, and that's why I guess I'm having a conversation with you because you certainly have a bit of that. It's like this person is living not at odds with the world, but they're just like figuring out who they are and continue to like make that, you know, sprout that and make more of that, you know.
Yes, what a confusing and strange journey.
Yeah, because it's obviously never ending what you can fucking pull out from within. Yeah. Right. The depths are truly epic.
Yes. Creativity is infinite. Yeah. Boundless. Kind of strange, you know.
Yeah, it really is. Like, where does that even come from?
Source energy.
I think, you know, once you start pondering a little too long about, you know, what are the source of thoughts and ideas and all this kind of stuff, you know, it really makes you, you know, it's funny, it's ironic that we're talking about the experience of working on ourselves and, you know, looking within, but I think through that pursuit, you do often come to the conclusion that there is something greater outside of you at the end of the day, probably. And then, I mean, depending on your perspective around that, maybe that thing is also inside of you or within you or whatever. But there is, you know, the source.
Yeah. Right. Well, the thing is, like, I've heard someone describe humans as the masters of limitation.
Oh, yeah, exactly. The bards of boundaries.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think that's beautiful because for most people... Okay, I'm getting into weird terrain.
We're all in. We're balls deep. Don't worry about it.
All right, I'm just going to be really blunt here. I've been getting into this dude who's channeling an alien. Claims to. I fully believe him because I really appreciate the perspective. And I think, like, the perspective is from, obviously, some entity with a higher consciousness. So the way that they describe reality is, it feels intuitive, but when you hear it, it's also like really weird because it's like it hasn't been said in that way before.
Right.
So they call the humans the masters of limitation because, and it's in the most endearing way. Oh, these guys are getting chatty.
That's
little
all right.
birdies.
Let them get at it.
Yeah. So like they call us the masters of limitation in a really endearing way because for them, being present and living through that joy and compassion is just life. It's the natural state, and it's the natural state for us as well, but we have just grown up under conditions where we've kind of had to pigeonhole who we think we are and where we think we're supposed to go.
It's like a very forceful sculpting.
Exactly. And it's kind of, it's forced us into disconnecting from that fundamental joy and intuitive understanding of the world. Like, you know, right now I think most people, the way they plan out their future is they actually think about it. They use their minds, but the mind is like a tool to just process reality. And when the mind kind of drops out a little bit, you can actually feel your way through reality. I feel like moment to moment, there will be situations that resonate with you more. You're like, damn, this shit's exciting. I want to do this, or not really feeling that. And when you start to honor that voice, it gets louder and louder and louder because it starts to realize, oh, you're listening to me. Okay, you're validating me. And it starts to come to the forefront. I feel, in my experience, oh my God, all subjective.
And it kind of like kind of overtakes a bit of reason and logic. It's just, it is intuitive. It is feeling. But there has to be a level of openness to that in the first place.
Yes, but the step that you need to take in order for that voice to come through is quite large. It's like it's almost like this fragile thing that needs to trust you.
Right, you got to commit to it.
You have to commit on some level to like reach down and like hold its hand and pull it up.
Pull it the fuck out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great visual analogy for what is, and like maybe that thing inside, you know, you could say it's potential, you could say it's destiny, you could say it's whatever it is, but who knows?
Some kind of magic.
Some kind of magic, for sure. Well, that also really segues. I think it almost segues and ticks off the third part of like ways to make yourself lighter within you. So we did mind first, then we did body, and the last one was soul. And I think we kind of just like really got into it. I think just any way you can access that feeling or energy is going to help your soul, you know, kind of feel lighter because it's actually been given space to kind of shine through. Right?
You know, I sometimes wonder like how many people actually feel okay throughout their day and what percentage of their day they feel okay, and how much sadness and rumination and bad
regret
feelings are they willing to experience throughout their day. Because I think when you don't realize that you're unhappy, you allow a lot of like negative emotions and experiences to just linger, and you don't realize you can in this moment be present and be content and actually in fact feel positive emotions towards experiences happening in your life. So, you know, it's often good to like stop and check in with yourself and be like, am I feeling okay? Like, am I actually okay? Am I like emotionally like blunting myself? Am I suppressing things and just pretending I'm okay when I'm actually not? Like, if you even feel remotely that way, I think it's good to like do a little bit of self-reflection and see how you're really feeling.
Yeah, that's really sage advice. Yeah, you really got to like take stock of yourself. If you got to like sit down and kind of like, I mean, maybe not break it down, but just identify what is happening.
Yeah.
You know, especially when it comes to, you know, feelings, moods, and emotions, and you know, your mood and emotion. Like, there's so much of that it's embodied.
Yeah.
And if you're not kind of like doing anything yourself to try and keep that regulated or understood, then not only is most of the external out of your control, but then you've kind of got these feral things running around inside of you that are a little bit out of control as well. And
they snowball really quick. So, you know, I'm in a position where, yes, I have like some kind of financial hardship, but I actually feel very like happy with how I spend my day and stuff like that. And I still even notice that sometimes like day to day, I can let one little emotional experience kind of snowball. So I live with relative freedom compared to most people, but I still have those experiences. So it's not really about, maybe it's not necessarily about creating a life where you have more freedom. Maybe it's just about like how you focus your attention on your inner world.
Right. It's your relationship with yourself and then the world, I guess.
Yeah, I guess the world kind of aligns itself based on your relationship with yourself, is what I believe.
Yeah, interesting.
It is my perspective.
Well, it certainly it like shifts in orbit around you in a way.
Yeah.
Because I mean, for me, so many times, like I've been in a place of, resistance and isolation, and then I get out, and even the smallest steps out of that, like falls into something that is, maybe not necessarily an opportunity, but it's just something which is like a little bit of a nod to like, you're on it,
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, so it definitely snowballs both ways, but it is nice when I think it feels so much more better, the first couple steps out of that place of whatever it is that you're not necessarily happy about.
Yeah.
But as soon as you take a couple steps out, it's, things seem to change pretty quickly.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like I think the most uncomfortable is to try and step out, but you're right. Once you do step out and you do make that effort and that leap, you get this like validation from the world around you, just like, yes, your vibe is changing, and because your vibe's changing, you're having experiences that you wouldn't regularly have, and these experiences are giving you something, like they're feeding you.
Yeah, and there's probably no point looking at it further past that, because to try and assign any like intent behind the universal kind of thing, or
it means nothing. It's all about you.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly. It's better to be comfortable with reading the signs or just seeing the signs than, I guess, ignoring and not looking at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because if you're ignoring and not looking at all, what are you following? What are you doing? Like, where are you going?
Yeah, you're endlessly lost.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think probably like a good way to kind of pull all the ideas of becoming lighter, within living lighter, is trying to find that kind of that direction up or forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it certainly takes like sitting with yourself, spending time with yourself, identifying in your mind, your body, your soul, what's happening. And at least, because at the very least, you just have to accept whatever's happening. That's the very first thing before you can do anything else, before you decide to tackle or not tackle or negotiate with anything.
Yeah.
It just has to be like, okay, here it is.
Yeah.
It's the super now. It's super rough.
Yes.
It's shit. And it could be rock bottom. It could not be rock, but it doesn't matter. But
yeah. The only way you can really start to heal is by becoming okay with where you are and knowing that where you want to be is going to be better than where you are now.
Totally.
So just like, radical okayness, radical acceptance. I know all these words maybe have been hijacked and kind of sound gross to some people, but like disregarding the semantics, the energy behind what we're saying is just like, you have no choice but to be where you are. So you also have no choice but to be okay with where you are, because that will bring you the most peace.
Yeah.
To be where you are and then to reject where you are is only going to cause you pain emotionally.
Yes. Yeah, because it's a further descent, because there's almost like it never bottoms out. Like there's no end to it.
Yes.
There's just no end to it, which is
totally.
And it can end in like literal insanity. I mean, everyone's only 1 or 2 steps away from going crazy, right? Like losing it. Whatever it is, and I guess that it is what you think to be you is. Yeah.
This is super random, but I was watching this guy. His name's Chris, I think, and he hosts a channel on YouTube called SBSK, which is Special Books for Special Kids.
Oh, cool.
And he goes around, he like interviews people with like mental disabilities, physical, like severely burnt people, like, all sorts of people.
Right.
And one time he was interviewing someone who had schizophrenia. And I remember watching this video and actually feeling quite disturbed about how this person's experience of schizophrenia and how it actually onset for them is not too far away from really intense, emotional, panicked, anxious experiences that I've had. It was really like quite confronting. So you're right, there is like there's this endless bottomless pit that you can just keep falling into. And you know, I'm not implying anyone's going to be schizophrenic, but
Right.
it's not so far outside of our realities to experience difficult mental
Conditions or whatever.
conditions.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's the stakes, right? The stakes is kind of your sanity. So you're probably better off getting in touch with who you are, where you're at,
Yeah.
and seeing how far away from that you can get.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel the further away from that you are, actually the more capacity you have to potentially help people who are in that situation. Because if you're too close to there, I feel like you could almost, you know,
You could knock yourself right into that
Yeah.
situation. You have to be quite grounded if you are to like assist somebody else in picking themselves up. Like,
yes,
you have to be on the other side of that threshold.
right, and not just like, I guess not just mental illness, but yeah, be cautious of trying to help other people when you are, you know, when you're not helping yourself.
Yes.
You know, because
Yeah.
that would be, because if you're already burdened with you, and then you're trying to like burden yourself with somebody else in a sense, then
Right.
there's just no room.
And generally, somebody who is trying to help someone else is inadvertently what they're trying to do is show themselves what they need for themselves.
I've been doing it for years.
Well, we can't help it. You know, there is a drive in all humans, I think, for acting of service.
Sure, but like I say it truly being like there was a perspective of like awareness around it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right. Like
Yeah.
not quite unconscious, but you know, it's because if you're doing it to fill any kind of lack in your life, which, you know, arguably, let's be generous and say that like 65% of the time I was doing it for me, you know.
Yeah.
It's still like, yeah, I could have just been putting that just into me,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
I guess that's how I'm thinking about
And
it.
like, you know, it's actually not selfish of you to focus that energy that you're giving to someone else that you actually aren't in a space to give someone else. It's not selfish to refocus that energy on yourself, because ultimately when you get to the place where you want to be in your life,
Yeah.
you can then, that's the time for you to actually share and give back.
Right, because you're so grounded,
capable.
you can almost like leverage people out, or give them, or at least give them a little bit of relief, or
Yes.
like whatever it is, you know.
And you can respect your own boundaries in the process, because you'll have
Yes.
days maybe where you understand that you don't feel like helping, and you will honor that.
Right.
So you'll know how to read yourself better and actually know what you're capable of.
Yeah, because I think to be able to set boundaries with other people, I think it's not as important, or not the first step. It's first, like, you have to set the boundaries within yourself.
Yes.
You know, and as you kind of said, well, as your alien channeling friend
guy.
said earlier, your guy, you know, we should become the master of our own limitations.
Yes.
You know, because we could really wear that as a badge of honor if we truly utilize that to its fully potential.
Totally, yeah.
Right? Because yes, there's limitations.
Mm-hmm.
Like, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, aside from the flesh vehicle, there's just everything is a boundary, right? Everything is a limitation. So, yeah, exploring that territory and being the master of that, like being the master of what you can do within an arm's reach, is insane,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. And beyond. I mean, so it's interesting, right? Because, like, I would argue against there being limitation.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But I'm saying devil's advocate, if you were.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, like, well, so essentially, you know, what the idea is behind what my alien dude is saying, that I fully believe and am now using as my own perspective,
Please.
is that, like, that, you know, obviously there are collective agreements that happen. We all have to operate within gravity. We're not going to just like randomly grow wings. Like,
Right.
It's just, there are certain beliefs that we all collectively agree make sense for us to explore this life and
Right.
physical reality.
Especially medically as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in terms of your dreams and your aspirations, there's no upper limit. As long as they are still within the parameters of how three-dimensional reality work and how our physics work and how our sciences work and how our math work, whatever. Like, if you have something that's calling to you that brings you so much joy, you don't need to know where it's going. Maybe you like to make cookies shaped like flowers, and that's all you know about your dream.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Just keep following that joy, as much as it feels like a risk because you don't know where it's going, you don't know what it means. Maybe that leads you to something else, or maybe your flower cookies pop off and you go international.
Yeah, totally. I could see the cookie idea depending on, the kind of the style and how cool they look and how good they taste. You can
maybe
take cookies
they're all
pretty far.
like Australian, like gum nut, like they're all Australian flowers.
True.
Might be cute. I don't know.
A couple blossoms and stuff in there. Nice. Okay, well, before we had this podcast and when I called you up to see if you wanted to jump on the pod, which I appreciate you coming down for.
Thank you.
Or me coming down here for.
Yeah, you're at my house.
Either way. We had a chat, and I think we got into the conversation the topic of lists.
Yes.
And that kind of like is what connected my ideas over the past week, and then coming up with this theme of living lighter. And you had a take on the list, which blew my mind a little bit. So if you can remember it, Amutha, can you please tell the good fine people about your approach to lists?
Okay, so I was, having a kind of intense day and feeling really uncertain about the future, as you do in the creative industry or, whatever industry you're in. And I was on my way to this event called Playback. Happens at the Gasso. A bunch of producers get together. We listen to each other's beats. We give each other feedback. It's really beautiful and wholesome. So I just park up, and I've just finished listening to this, lecture that this lady's giving. And one thing she says is, okay, so create a list, and on one side of the list, write down things that you need to do, like things you need to organize. And then on the other side, write things that the universe needs to organize. And I'm writing this out, and I'll finish this story. This is completely irrelevant, but I might as well. So I'm writing on this list all these things I need to do. I want to start working on this beat. I need to do that. And on the other side, what I need the universe to organize was bring somebody to me that can help these dreams happen. And right as I say that, I look up. This car's been parked in front of me for like 10 minutes. And someone, as I look up, gets out of the car, walks into the venue. Didn't really think much of it, but I felt some significance in that. I felt some connection to this human. And when I walked in, the only spare seat was next to this person. So I went and sat down, and we immediately connected, started talking. I felt like I had known him for years, lifetimes even. The sweetest guy you'll ever meet, Dave Machine. And we've just started a project together, and it's absolutely incredible. I'm so excited. So, sometimes letting go will bring what you need to you.
Yeah, and also, the cool thing about a list is it gives you like control and direction.
Yes.
It helps you see clear, right? And also it's like it's not in your head, it's on the paper. So it's in a different place now.
Right.
But I think the aspect of saying things that you can organize, right? And then saying things that the universe can organize, because then you're setting up like some attention or awareness around what could happen in the world that would help facilitate and, support my endeavor.
Yeah.
And look, your experience was like very on the nose and very like, whoa, the universe is just like mooning you with its big asshole or whatever. It was almost just like the jester coming out in form, just being like, hey, you want good luck, kid? But I think it does kind of like makes me really think about, the things that you do have control over and the things you don't have control over. And there's so much that often burdens us that really we can't do too much about.
Yes.
And everything that we can do something about is generally all inside of us. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And writing that down, getting that physically written in front of you.
Right.
And then writing down what you can't control, but
Yeah.
what kind of would be convenient to happen in the world around you.
Yes.
Just making that distinction takes so much pressure off needing to make this really almost impossible thing happen.
Yeah, exactly. Because to try and coordinate you meeting this person, or to try and
Yep.
to actively seek that out,
Yes.
you're kind of just
exactly.
scaring it off from happening.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Wow.
Whoa. Well, that's been awesome. Yeah, I think that's I'm really glad that we came across the idea of living lighter, and especially like that final example of, because I've been resistant to lists and kind of ignored lists on and off forever. I'm just the kind of person that's all about, it's a chance card every single time playing Monopoly,
Yeah.
It's just like, it'll
Yeah.
sort itself out, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And there's elements of that. There's a part of that which is good, but
Yeah.
to really be able to have some more agency and set up intention with how you want to engage with the world,
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
You just think it's kind of looking at you rudely.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. When it's actually just reflecting you, it's showing you who
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah. Powerful. Well, Amutha, thank you for getting us so grounded today.
Thank you, Dilly.
Is there anything you want to plug or let the people know that you're working on now, or places for people to go?
Maybe none of the above. I don't know. I just
Or you can just have a final sentiment or thought, a gesture or offering.
Sometimes it's quite difficult to navigate through reality. And in those moments where you're feeling that, it's really okay. It's really okay. Like, regardless of, your circumstances, maybe you're going through a rough time, or maybe it's a great time, but you're still feeling unsettled or uncomfortable. Just put your hand over your heart, close your eyes, take a breath in and be like, it's actually okay. It's all okay. Everything that I'm feeling is okay. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
You.